Welcome to episode 26 of Secret City Geek Lab, your resource for everything geek. We'll talk movies, TV, comic books, video games, and anything geek. I'm your host, Alan Ng, and you'll hear from me and members of the improv comedy group Secret City Comic Society. And today we are going to have a special guest, Michael McEvilly. Today's show is brought to you by Secret City Comic Society, the best in all ages improv comedy in downtown Fullerton. Visit Secret City Comic Society and the Geek Lab at secretcitycomedy.com/geeklab. Coming up on this week's show, a movie review of The World's End with Michael McEvilly, and we return to the D23 Expo, and we go over the Walt Disney Studios live-action movie session. But first up, a movie review of The World's End. The third installment of director Edgar Wright's trilogy of comedies with stars Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, following the success of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. In The World's End, 20 years after attempting an epic pub crawl, 5 childhood friends reunite with when one of them becomes hellbent on trying the drinking marathon again. They are convinced to stage an encore by Gary King, played by Simon Pegg, a 40-year-old man trapped at a cigarette end of his teens, who drags his reluctant pals to their hometown and once again attempts to reach the fabled pub, The World's End. As they attempt to reconcile the past and present, they realize the real struggle is for the future. Not just theirs, but humankind's. Reaching the world's end is the least of their worries. And here's a review from Michael McEvilly. I'm with Michael McEvilly, and he just saw The World's End. Tell me, what is this basic story of The World's End?
Basic story goes something like this. There's a group of 5 friends, and they're all college buddies, and they decide they're going to do this giant pub crawl, and due to certain circumstances, which kind of gives away a couple jokes I won't tell you, but they don't complete the pub crawl. They want to do 12 pubs, and they don't make it to the 12th. So, flash forward to, many years later, and one in the group wants to, Simon Pegg's character wants to repeat the pub, just as like a, hey, let's get back together, see if we can get it done. Yeah. And, antics ensue. Okay. Lots of hilarity.
So what did you like about the movie? What were some of the elements about the movie that you loved?
Well, I was a huge fan of Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, so it had a big billing for me, and I thought that coming back for a third movie with a lot of the same actors from the previous movies, the characters really stood out. Lots of different characters.
These are definitely different characters from the other 2 movies.
Absolutely. And, I would say as far as energy goes, each person definitely brought a different thing to the table that they didn't bring in other movies. That and, the pacing never stopped. The editing had to be a nightmare because it was just bam, 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 bam.
Okay, so it definitely doesn't slow down at all.
Not at all.
All right. So
start to finish.
Sounds like you really liked the movie.
I loved it. I thought it was great. It was probably my favorite comedy this year, by far.
Any things you didn't like about the movie?
I'm sure some people are going to leave the ending up to interpretation because it kind of goes off. It has a very singular track, and then it goes way off the track towards the end. But I personally loved it. I thought it was super funny and very unique.
All right, great. So from a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate The World's End?
I'm going to give it a 9, a solid 9, which is really high for me. But yeah, it was fantastic. I would recommend taking anybody to do it.
This is KTST-FM. I'm Alan Ng, and you're listening to Secret City Geek Lab. Moving along from our review of The World's End, we're going to go back to the D23 Expo and go over the live-action movie panel from the Walt Disney Company. So what is Walt Disney going to be doing over the next few years? Well, out came Walt Disney Studios President Alan Horn to go over each of the small business units from each of the Walt Disney Studios company. The first thing he started off with was Lucasfilm. The big announcement from Lucasfilm at the D23 Expo is that there is no announcement. So, Episode 7 of Star Wars is so far in pre-production and planning that nothing can be said at this time. Everything is just merely speculation and rumor. Episode 7 is due to come out Memorial Day weekend of 2015, but I hear that actually may change. Most Star Wars films, actually all the Star Wars films, came out during the Memorial Day weekend. We'll see if they continue on with this tradition. So, with nothing coming out of Lucasfilm, we move to Marvel Studios. And out comes President Kevin Feige to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the fact that Marvel has over 7,000 characters to draw from to do movies. As you know, Marvel is currently in phase 2 of their cinematic plans, starting with Iron Man Part 3, which came out just a couple months ago. Coming up next, though, is Thor: The Dark World. Marvel let's see, Marvel started talking about, or Kevin Feige talked about Phase 2. And then we were shown a clip of a battle scene that they showed at Comic-Con, where basically Thor takes to action with his fellow warriors, and they take on a stone giant. Has a very different tone than the first. I think this movie is going to spend most of its time in Asgard than it did in on Earth. During the session, they bring out Tom Hiddleston, Natalie Portman, and Sir Anthony Hopkins. And Natalie talks about how her character is more the fish out of water this time. So instead of Thor being the fish out of water in the first movie, it is Natalie Portman's character. Tom Hiddleston talked about how much fun it was being Loki, and he hinted at the fact that he's not going to sing in this panel like he did at the animation studio panel. We're then shown a clip of Jane's first visit to Asgard. The scene starts with Jane on an Asgardian medical table being overlooked by Asgardian doctors. They are not used to examining a mortal, and Odin demands that she is returned to Midgard. When we see that she is infected with something serious and returned to Earth, might even kill her. After the session, we had a chance to talk to Natalie Portman and asked her this question: what do you think of the live-action session and your appearance at D23? And here's what she had to say.
It was amazing. It was such a positive feeling, and you could feel the ground rumbling, and it reminds you, what movies are for.
Then asked her, what was it like working with her fellow actors in the movie Thor?
It's amazing. Chris is really just such a wonderful person and so fun to be around, and obviously an incredible actor. So it's easy. And then Tom is wonderful, and also all of the above. I mean, he just has the best personality and is such a great actor. And then I got to work with Anthony Hopkins, which was just like, I couldn't believe I was in the same room as him. He's just a giant. So.
And then we moved on from Thor to Captain America Winter Soldier. Captain America just finished production and is now in the editing process. It's due to come out, I think, in the spring of next year, pretty much where the Iron Man 3 slot was. We're showing the same scene that they showed at Comic-Con, where Captain America fights an elevator full of soldiers sent to take him down. The last soldier says this is not personal, and then Captain America stands over the knocked out soldier and says, it feels personal. Kevin then brings out Sebastian Stan, Anthony Mackey, and Chris Evans. Sebastian Stan, who played Bucky in the first Captain America movie, talked about what happened to his character, and he says he fell down a big ravine and now he's back. And then Anthony Mackey talks about his role as the Falcon, one of Captain America's most popular sidekicks during his comic book runs. And Mackey talks about how great it was to be the Falcon and how fun it was to fly. Chris Evans has a tight window currently between projects, and he wanted to spend the day at Disneyland, and so that's why he's at D23, there to make an appearance for his fans and then to go across the street to Disneyland. Then next we're shown an unfinished scene where Captain America, Black Widow, and a team of S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers infiltrate a freighter. Captain America virtually subdues the entire ship on his own, and kind of in the banter between Black Widow and Cap, Black Widow is concerned that Captain America is not dating. All right, so we got not only did we get to talk to Natalie Portman, but we got to talk to Captain America himself, Chris Evans. And the question posed to him was, what do you think of the response you're getting to Captain America from the D23 crowd?
It's exciting. It's a little overwhelming, but it's rewarding ultimately. That's part of the treat, working so hard on these movies, knowing that it's going to be met with such enthusiasm by these fans.
And then I asked him about what Captain America is going to be like in the next movie, or what are some things he's struggle with.
I think he's still fish out of water, but it's not so much rooted in his unfamiliarity with technology. It's more about his discourse with the way society is and the current political climate. I think Cap's always just wanted to be a good guy and to do what's right. And I think it's a little bit easier in the 40s to know Nazis are bad.
And then being at D23, are you a big Disney fan? What's your association with Disney?
Big Disney fan. We went to Disney World. Disney World is what I grew up with. But I do love Disneyland. It's close. I go a lot. But Disney World was a big piece of the childhood.
And then we got to talk to Anthony Mackey, who plays the Falcon. And so we asked him a little more about the Falcon himself.
The great thing about the Falcon that I love so much is, he's unlike any other superhero. No one flies the way I fly. No one fights the way I fight. So I think pairing him with Captain America works so well because it's not so much a leading man sidekick relationship. It's a mutual respect tag team relationship. And, he leans on me just as much as I lean on him. So it worked out to where we actually had a lot of fun shooting this movie. And Chris and I became good friends because, we realize how hard it is to put on a suit every day, a superhero suit as an adult, and take yourself seriously. So it kind of worked out for us.
And now that you're part of the Disney family, what do you think of the D23 Expo and meeting all the fans?
The closest thing I've experienced every day of my life, and Comic-Con. Comic-Con was kind of surreal because that was my first time. I had never done anything like that before. And, really, as an actor, as an artist, you never really get to be in such an appreciative environment. Usually, if you're in an environment like that, everyone's there to critique you or judge you in some way, shape, or form, say how you should fail. But with this, you have people camping out all night, people buying tickets just to come in and see and support what you've done. So it's kind of extraordinary to be a part of this movie and be able to experience that because I'll probably never be able to experience that again. So I was just soaking it up, having a good time.
All right, and that's our look at Captain America, the Winter Soldier, coming out in spring of 2014. Moving on, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. That's going to come in after Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Guardians of the Galaxy began shooting 2 weeks ago, and so the cast was not able to appear at D23 because they had just appeared at Comic-Con. They flew them from England to San Diego, and they weren't going to do the same thing for us Disney fans. We're shown a great clip of just kind of a teaser for Guardians of the Galaxy. It more or less serves as an introduction to all the members of this crew. What we first see is John C. Reilly and Lee Pace. They talk about this ragtag band of mercenaries, galactic mercenaries, featuring Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt. Gamora, played by Zoe Saldana. Drax, who's played by WWE champion Dave Bautista. And then we're shown some footage of Rocket Raccoon and Groot. And the rumor as of this point is that Vin Diesel might be voicing the role of Groot, and Bradley Cooper might be voicing the role of Rocket Raccoon. Now, the movie Guardians of the Galaxy has a very different feel than the rest of the Marvel movies. One, it's directed by James Gunn, who tends to take a comedic approach, a light approach to his films. Also, Guardians of the Galaxy takes place outside of Earth. The galaxy is such a huge place. And so there's definitely a more light and comedic tone to this movie than what you've seen in some of the other Marvel films that maybe take themselves a little too seriously. The best way I can describe the feel of it so far is if you think about all the space sequences that occurred in the movie Lilo and Stitch. Just a bunch of ragtag characters who are living out in the galaxy. All right, coming back. This is KTSTFM. This is Secret City Geek Lab, and I'm Alan Ng, your host. Moving on to, in our discussion of the live action movie panel for D23, what else is Disney coming up with? So Disney has a lot of film studios. They have Lucasfilm now, they have Marvel Studios, and they also have Disney Nature. And if you've been kind of following Disney Nature over the last few years, they ran some great movies such as Chimpanzee, some whales. Coming up in April of 2014 on Earth Day, Disney Nature brings you Bears. Disney Nature strives to bring spectacular stories of Earth to life in amazing ways. And Bears will follow a family of bears for a full year as they survive and exist in the Alaskan wilderness. Proceeds of the sales during that first week will go to help the National Parks Foundation. It's going to look like it's going to be a very fun film and something great for the kids. Moving on to the flagship studio at the Walt Disney Studios, and that is the Walt Disney Studios. Walt Disney Studios is important because every movie that comes out of Walt Disney Studios bears the name of Walt Disney. And movies coming out of there there's a little more weight to it. And so the first movie that they started to talk about was Muppets Most Wanted, and that's coming out in March of 2014. They're still filming it right now, And along with the Muppets, the movie stars Ricky Gervais, Tina Fey, and Ty Burrell. Muppets Most Wanted takes place after the last movie, where the Muppets have taken their show on an international tour. During the tour, our friends are caught up in international espionage. Kermit is kidnapped and replaced by number one criminal in the world, Constantine, who happens to look exactly like Kermit the Frog. Ty Burrell comes out onto the stage at the D23 Expo in this incredibly small car for the movie. He plays a French Interpol agent who is teamed up with American CIA agent Sam the Eagle, and their task is to apprehend Constantine. We're then shown a scene from the movie featuring Constantine as he first arrives at the Muppet Theater tour, and he now has to interact with all the Muppets. And then they break into a song out in the back alley with Ricky Gervais, him and Constantine. Then we're shown a video from Miss Piggy, Tina Fey, and Kermit, and they all want to wish everyone at the D23 Expo a great time. Miss Piggy, you get it. Haha. All right. So afterwards, we had a chance to talk to Ty Burrell about his work with the Muppets, and I asked him what it meant to him to work actually with the Muppets.
I grew up watching the Muppets, and it was a really important part of like my, the forming of my silly personality. That combination of being silly, but they also were, my parents loved to watch it too, and I think this latest iteration from James and Nick Stoller and Jason Segel in the last one is even more balanced. I mean, even more fun for adults as well. I think the humor is really smart. It's still ridiculous, so silly, but I think it's just genuinely funny. So I was just really excited to be a part of it.
And Ty, what do you think about the D23 Expo and all the Disney fans who've come to see what the Muppets are up to?
It's pretty amazing, actually. I haven't really ever been a part of this before. I'm now, because of Modern Family and some other things, I've done a couple of Disney things, and you get a sense for what it is. But when you really see the scope of the following, it's pretty impressive.
Muppets Most Wanted, and next they talked about Into the Woods, which is based on the Stephen Sondheim, James Lapine musical from the 1980s. They were there to briefly announce some casting to confirm. Meryl Streep will play the witch, Johnny Depp will play the big bad wolf, and then Anna Kendrick, Chris Pine, and Emily Blunt will also appear in the movie. And Rob Burnett, who directed Chicago, is going to direct this movie. Into the Woods comes out at Christmas of 2014. Listening to KTST-FM, I'm Alan, and this is the Secret City Geek Lab. Continuing on, Disney is also producing Cinderella, which will be a live-action adaptation of the Disney classic, and will be faithful to the original. Lily James plays Cinderella, Richard Madden plays Prince Charming, Cate Blanchett plays the evil stepmother, and Helena Bonham Carter plays the fairy godmother. The director Kenneth Branagh visited us through a video message and talked about his approach and the challenges to make the movie. Cinderella is full of big moments, and they had to recreate the big moments on the screen, such as a glass slipper, making it look real, being able to walk around in it. Also treating Cinderella as a heroine and giving her big moments, like the grand entrance to the ballroom, and then the magical moments of transformations of footmen and horses. Then they talk about Maleficent. In this movie, Angelina Jolie plays the title role, and she plays basically the villain from the Disney animated classic Sleeping Beauty. Maleficent is scheduled to open July 2nd in 2014. The movie begins with her as a teenage fairy, and she witnesses the atrocities committed by King Kinloch, played by the new Doctor Who Peter Capaldi. This moment of injustice changes Maleficent forever, and we slowly follow her from a fairy into becoming one of the most hated villains, or one of the best villains, of the entire Disney catalog. At the end of the movie Maleficent, you're going to be surprised who you're going to be rooting for. The role of Cinderella is going to be played by Elle Fanning, and her parents, King Stephen, will be played by Charlton Copley from District 9 and the A-Team, and the Queen will be played by Miranda Richardson. Now, what it feels like, Maleficent is going to be kind of the wicked treatment given to Sleeping Beauty, taking a villain and giving her more human side. Angelina came out and she talked about what it was like being on the set. And, she realized that now that she's in a Disney movie, she's part of the Disney family. And so whenever kids would visit on set, she'd go over to the children and say hi. And then the children would go off and scream and run. One little boy actually said to her mom, "Mommy, please tell the mean witch to stop talking to me." Jolie's daughter is also going to be in the movie. She will play the 4-year-old young Aurora. Jolie was also asked about her relationship to the Disney company, and she said that she had been a fan of Disney since she was a child, and that she had connections with the character Maleficent. The Disney character scared her as a child, but there was some kind of connection that she had with her. Since I was a little girl, she says, Maleficent was my favorite. She had such elegance and grace, and yet was so cruel, so wonderfully and deliciously cruel. Let's see. We're then shown a clip from Maleficent. The clip recreates the gift presentation scene for the baby Aurora in the movie Sleeping Beauty. Maleficent is insulted that she was not invited to the ceremony, and then places the spinning wheel curse on the baby. The clip looks and feels like the original animation, but done in live action. If the rest of the movie looks this amazing, this is going to be a good-looking film. All right, still a little bit more to come, and so we're going to take one final break for the Geek Lab. This is KTSTFM. I'm Alan Ng, and you're listening to the Geek Lab. Moving on, the movie Tomorrowland. Oddly enough, there's a box found in the Disney archives at the Disney studio, and it was marked 1952. It was believed that this box was put together by Walt Disney himself, and there's a lot of mysterious things in this box, and they were on display at the D23 Expo in the lobby. But Disney tasked Brad Bird and Damon Lindelof to put together a film inspired by what was found in this box. And that movie is called Tomorrowland. It stars George Clooney. And this mysterious box has a lot of mystery to it, and so they wanted to give that flavor to it. So we asked Damon Lindelof, how is secrecy a part of the Disney magic?
I think, secret keeping has been a big part of the legacy of this company, and I do feel, particularly in the early days of Imagineering, as the park was being conceptualized, WED was really this kind of black ops division of the Walt Disney Company. Nobody really knew what they were doing, and that idea of building something and keeping it veiled until you were ready to show it to someone. That's showmanship 101. It's why movie theaters used to have curtains. And so obviously that's the kind of storytelling that I really gravitate to. It's what gets my heart beating. It's certainly the kind of storytelling that I like to do. That was really the genesis for kind of the feel that we were going for in Tomorrowland.
All right, and then that's Tomorrowland. The last movie they brought up was Saving Mr. Banks, which is the story of Walt Disney and P.L. Travers. We talked about it a couple weeks ago on the Geek Lab, but here's an interview with B.J. Novak and Jason Schwartzman.
Well, I think that Tomorrowland really evokes this idea of the future that is much different than the idea of the future that we have now, projected out from the year 2013. That Tomorrowland future is really evocative of the space age, that kind of that right stuff era, for lack of a better word. And so that idea of where's my jetpack? What happened to that future? Because I'm seeing all the other futures. I'm seeing the robots taking over and killing everyone. I'm seeing the Hunger Games. I'm seeing Blade Runner. I'm seeing urban sprawl. I'm seeing environmental disaster. I'm seeing the White House blow up in any number of versions. Where's my jetpack? And I do feel like it's not the most original idea in the world, but it is actually fresh in the landscape now. And most importantly, as corny as it is to say, it is really meaningful that Walt the futurist, this guy who basically in a time capsule 50 years ago sends a letter to the year 2006, and the last two sentences basically say when you're reading this, my hope is that really there's no war anymore, and you read it and you go, oh man, I'd love to give this guy that, and that became part of the alchemy of the movie too.
That was our look at the live action panel movie session of D23 Expo. This has been episode 26 of Secret City Geek Lab. It is brought to you by Secret City Comic Society, Fullerton's best all ages improv comedy. Come back next week for more news and updates in the world of geekdom and nerdity. A special thanks to you, Michael McEvilly, and also visit us online for daily geek news and reviews of comic books, movies, and television at secretcitycomedy.com/geeklab. Until next time, have a geek week.